I used to believe that marriage was like a garden, something that bloomed with constant care and attention. For 15 years, I tended to ours with devotion, pulling weeds of doubt, watering with affection, and providing the sunlight of encouragement. James and I had built what I thought was unshakable, a charming colonial in Westfield with hydrangeas I'd planted myself, 2 children who inherited his dimples and my stubborn streak, and enough memories to fill 100 photo albums. The first, cracks appeared so subtly I almost missed them. A late meeting here, a weekend conference there, his phone suddenly facing down on tables. The passwords I once knew, changed without explanation. But the most telling sign was the silence, not the comfortable quiet of 2 people who no longer needed words, but the hollow absence of connection. "You're overthinking again, Emily," he'd say whenever I asked if something was wrong. His smile would appear, practiced and efficient. But his eyes remained distant, already focused on the door, the clock, or the next reason to be somewhere else. I started keeping a mental catalog of these small betrayals. The dinner reservations, mysteriously canceled. Birthday gifts that felt impersonal, as if chosen by a stranger. The way he'd flinch slightly when I touched him unexpectedly. Each instance alone could be dismissed, but together they formed a mosaic of estrangement I couldn't ignore. One Tuesday afternoon, while reorganizing his office at home, something he'd asked me not to do, I found a receipt tucked between tax documents. A hotel in the city, just 20 minutes away, charged to his personal credit card. Room service for 2, a bottle of champagne. The date, our anniversary, when he'd claimed to be stuck in Philadelphia due to a canceled flight. I sat on his office floor for hours, the paper trembling in my hands, thinking of the text I'd sent him that night. How I'd told him I missed him. How he'd replied that he missed me too, with a sad face emoji that now seemed grotesque in its falsehood. That night, I prepared his favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. I wore the blue dress he once said brought out my eyes. I poured the wine we'd discovered on our trip to Napa, and I waited, the receipt burning in my pocket like a hot coal. "What's the occasion?" he asked when he walked in, loosening his tie. His surprise seemed genuine, as if he couldn't fathom why his wife would make an effort anymore. "Just felt like cooking something nice," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. I watched him eat, compliment the food, tell a story about a client meeting. I nodded at all the right moments, laughed when appropriate. But inside, I was screaming with questions I couldn't yet voice. After dinner, he retreated to the shower. I heard the water running as I stared at his phone, left carelessly on the counter. 4 digits. I tried our anniversary first, then his birthday. Nothing. Then our daughter's birthday. The screen unlocked, and I hated myself for what I was about to do, for the woman I'd become. A woman who checked her husband's phone like a detective, searching for evidence of her own obsolescence. Her name was Rachel. The messages went back 6 months. Heart emojis, inside jokes, intimate photos I had to look away from. Plans made for nights I thought he was working. Complaints about his life, about me. How I didn't understand him anymore. How I was too focused on the kids. How Rachel made him feel alive again. I placed the phone exactly where he'd left it, wiped the tears from my face, and went upstairs, to our bedroom. I pulled out a suitcase, not for him, but for me. As the shower continued to run, I packed enough for a few days, called my sister, and wrote a note so brief it seemed absurd given the years we'd shared. I know about Rachel. I'll be at Kate's. When I left, he was still in the shower, humming a tune I didn't recognize. That's what hurt the most somehow, that he was happy enough to sing while our life together burned to ashes around him. The next 3 days passed in a blur of tissues and tea at my sister's apartment. Kate wanted me to call a lawyer immediately, but I couldn't bring myself to make that final declaration. 17 texts from James lit up my phone, each one more desperate than the last. Please come home. We need to talk. It's not what you think. I made a mistake. And finally, the one that nearly broke me. I still love you. I didn't reply to any of them. On the 4th day, I drove back to our house while James was at work. I needed clothes, toiletries, and most importantly, space to think without Kate's well-meaning but overwhelming advice. The house felt different, colder somehow, as if it knew its foundation had cracked. Family photos that once brought comfort now seemed like artifacts from a museum of lies. The doorbell rang as I was folding sweaters into my suitcase. Through the peephole, I saw Diane, my neighbor from across the street. We weren't close friends, but we'd shared enough coffee mornings and school fundraisers to be more than acquaintances. "Emily?" she said when I opened the door, her face drawn with concern. "I've been worried about you." I invited her in, grateful for the distraction from my thoughts. We sat at the kitchen island, 2 untouched mugs of coffee between us. "I need to tell you something," she began, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "And I've been debating whether I should for months." My stomach tightened as she continued. "Last summer, at the Thompsons' pool party, the one you missed because you had the flu, James got very drunk." She paused, eyes fixed on her coffee. "He was flirting with several women, but especially with Rachel Klein. They disappeared for almost an hour. When they came back, her lipstick was smeared, and his shirt was buttoned wrong." The timeline collapsed in my mind. Not 6 months of betrayal, but nearly a year. Not one woman, but potentially several. And not just strangers from work, but Rachel Klein, a woman I knew, who had been to our home for dinner parties, who had complimented my cooking while sleeping with my husband. "There's more," Diane said, her voice barely audible. 2 weeks ago, I saw them at Riverside Park. They were with a realtor, looking at houses. They were holding hands, Emily, like a couple. The room tilted sideways. House hunting. Not just an affair, but a future, being planned without me. I steadied myself against the counter, bile rising in my throat. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I managed to ask. Diane's eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, and I didn't want to be the one to break your heart." After she left, I sat alone in the kitchen for hours, piecing together a new reality from fragments of truth. The business trips that never appeared on his company's calendar. The mysterious charges for gifts I never received. The growing distance between us that I'd attributed to stress or middle-age malaise. When my phone rang, the caller ID showed Rachel Klein's name, a contact saved from school fundraisers and neighborhood gatherings. My finger hovered over the screen before I answered. "Emily." Her voice was tight, controlled. "James told me you found out." "Not from him," I replied, surprising myself with my calm. "What do you want, Rachel?" "To explain. It's not just some tawdry affair. We're in love. We've been in love for a long time." "Love," I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "Is that what you call sneaking around behind my back? Planning a future while I'm still in the picture? Did you tour houses together before or after you slept with my husband?" Her sharp intake of breath told me James hadn't shared Diane's revelation. "He said he would tell you everything," she stammered. "He promised he'd ask for a divorce last month." "Well, he didn't," I said, a cold clarity washing over me. "But thank you for confirming that you're both liars." I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then I went upstairs to our bedroom, the room where we'd conceived our children, shared secrets, and built a life I thought was unbreakable. I opened James's dresser drawers and closet, pulling out armfuls of clothes, and dumped them on the high bed. Suits, ties, the sweater I'd given him last Christmas. I gathered everything and carried it downstairs, through the kitchen, and out to the driveway. The gasoline can from the garage made the pile smell acrid and dangerous. As I struck the match, I didn't feel the catharsis I'd expected, just a hollow vindication as 15 years of lies went up in flames. Sirens wailed in the distance as neighbors gathered on their lawns, keeping a respectful distance from my inferno of betrayal. The flames had climbed higher than I'd anticipated, licking at the evening sky with orange fingers. I stood perfectly still, watching designer shirts curl and blacken, wondering absently if burning polyester was toxic to breathe. A hand gripped my shoulder. I turned to find Officer Reyes, who coached my son's little league team, looking at me with a mixture of concern and professional assessment. "Mrs. Collins," he said gently, "I'm going to need you to step back while we put this out." I nodded and moved to the grass, watching firefighters extinguish what remained of James's wardrobe. The spectacle felt surreal, like watching someone else's breakdown from a safe distance. This wasn't me, surely. Emily Collins didn't set fires in driveways. She hosted PTA meetings and remembered birthdays, and forgave her husband's late nights without question. Yet here I stood, hands smelling of gasoline, as my neighbors whispered behind cupped palms. Officer Reyes approached again after the flames. Died. "Emily," he said, using my first name now, off duty. "I should take you in for this." "I know," I replied, oddly calm. He glanced at the charred pile, then back at me. "Your husband called us. He's on his way." Of course he was. James would be mortified by the public spectacle, the neighborhood gossip, the damage to his pristine reputation. The affair could be hidden, but not this, not his wife's. Very visible unraveling. "Do you have somewhere you can go tonight?" Officer Reyes asked. "Someone who can stay with you?" Before I could answer, a silver BMW screeched into the driveway, and James emerged, face contorted with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Anger, embarrassment, perhaps even fear. He approached cautiously, as if I might be armed. "What the hell have you done?" he hissed, surveying the smoking remains. I laughed, a sound so foreign to my ears it could have come from a stranger. "What have I done? That's rich, coming from you." Officer Reyes stepped between us. "Sir, I think it's best if you both take some time to cool down. Mrs. Collins was just telling me she has somewhere else to stay tonight." "She's not going anywhere," James said, the authority in his voice so practiced it almost sounded genuine. "This is her home. We just need to talk privately." "No," I said simply. The word hung in the air, small but immovable. James blinked, unused to direct refusal. "Emily, be reasonable. You can't just..." "I can't just what? Find out my husband's been cheating for a year? Discover he's been house hunting with his mistress? Realize our entire life together has been a lie?" My voice remained steady, each word precisely placed. "You're right. I can't just accept that. So I'm not going to." Officer Reyes shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Collins, do you have somewhere to go?" "She'll be staying with me," came a voice from behind us. My mother stood on the sidewalk, her small frame somehow commanding despite her age. She must have driven the 2 hours from her retirement community the moment Kate called her. "Mom," I breathed, relief washing over me. She approached with determination, her gaze fixed on James with the kind of contempt only a mother can summon for someone who's hurt her child. "Get your things, Emily. The children are already at my place with your sister." James stepped forward. "Barbara, you don't understand the situation." "I understand perfectly." She cut him off. "I understand that my daughter is standing in her driveway with police and firefighters because you couldn't keep your promises or your pants zipped. What else is there to know?" In that moment, I loved my mother more fiercely than I had in years, gathered what little I'd packed before the impromptu bonfire, and walked to her car without looking back at James. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, a man suddenly small against the backdrop of our large house, gesturing helplessly to Officer Reyes, who was writing something in his notepad. "I burned his clothes," I said to my mother after several minutes of silence. She kept her eyes on the road. "I know. I could have been arrested. But you weren't." Another mile passed before she spoke again. "When your father left me for his secretary, I cut up all his suits with kitchen scissors and mailed the pieces to his office. It was 1983, and they couldn't trace it back to me." A small, satisfied smile played at her lips. Sometimes a woman needs to make a statement. I stared at her profile. This woman I thought I knew completely. How many layers did we all have, hidden beneath the roles we played for others? "What happens now?" I asked, suddenly feeling like a child again, looking to my mother for answers. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Now you remember who you were before him, and then you decide who you want to become." As we drove through the gathering darkness, I leaned my head against the window and watched familiar landmarks slip away. Behind us, the remnants of a life I'd thought was real. Ahead, nothing but uncertainty, stretching out like the highway. Before us, terrifying in its emptiness, but mine to navigate as I chose. Telling the children was worse than discovering the affair. Worse than burning clothes in the driveway. Worse, even, than imagining James and Rachel touring houses together, planning their future while mine crumbled. My mother's retirement community had a small guest house where the four of us, me, 12-year-old Olivia, 9-year-old Ethan, and Kate, huddled together that first week. My sister slept on the pull-out couch, insisting I take the bedroom with the kids. Each night, they curled against me like they had as toddlers during thunderstorms, seeking protection from a danger they sensed but couldn't name. "When are we going home?" Ethan asked the third morning, pushing cereal around his bowl. I met Kate's eyes across the table, searching for guidance she couldn't give. "I'm not sure yet, buddy." "Is it because you and Dad are fighting?" Olivia's question was direct, her gaze uncomfortably perceptive. She'd always been too observant for her age. "Yes and no," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "Dad and I are having some adult problems that we need to figure out." "Like a divorce?" Her voice was small, but steady. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I'd avoided saying it aloud, as if not naming the inevitable might somehow prevent it. "Maybe," I admitted. "Would that scare you?" Olivia shrugged with forced nonchalance. "Maddie's parents got divorced last year. She gets double Christmas presents now." I reached across the table and took her hand. "There's more to it than presents, sweetie." "I know," she whispered, the brave facade cracking. "Maddie cries in the bathroom sometimes at lunch." That afternoon, while Mom took the kids to the community pool, I finally called the lawyer Kate had recommended. Marian Abernathy had handled 3 of my sister's friends' divorces, all with favorable outcomes for the wives. Her office smelled of leather and lemon polish, a deliberate contrast to the emotional chaos that walked through her door daily. "Tell me everything," she said after introductions, her silver bob framing a face that had clearly seen every variety of marital implosion. I did. The affair with Rachel, the house hunting, the lies stretching back a year or more, my improvised bonfire. When I finished, she didn't offer sympathy or outrage, just pragmatic next steps. Document everything. Credit, card statements, phone records, witness accounts of their public appearances together. Forward any texts or emails. And for God's sake, don't move back into that house without a formal separation agreement. But the children need stability, yes, but they also need a mother who isn't being gaslit by their father under the same roof, She leaned forward. Emily, men like your husband count on your desire to protect the children as leverage to manipulate you. Don't give him that power. That evening, James called as I was tucking the kids into bed. I stepped onto the small porch to take it, watching moths circle the yellow porch light. The children need to come home, he said without preamble. This arrangement isn't sustainable. Neither was our marriage, apparently, I replied. He sighed, the sound digitally compressed into static. I've been trying to reach you for days. We need to talk face to face. My lawyer says otherwise. A pause. You've already contacted a lawyer? Jesus, Emily, don't you think you're overreacting? One mistake. A year-long affair and shopping. For houses together is not one mistake, James. It's hundreds of deliberate choices. The house thing, it wasn't serious. Rachel got carried away. I was just... Stop. My voice was quiet but firm. I don't believe you anymore. I can't. Every word from your mouth now sounds like another lie. Another pause, longer this time. When he spoke again, his tone had hardened. Fine. If that's how you want to play this, my lawyer will contact yours. But I want to see my children this weekend. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. You can pick them up Saturday morning, have them back by dinner. After hanging up, I remained on the porch, listening to cicadas and distant laughter from the community center. The conversation left me hollow, yet somehow lighter, as if each severed connection with James freed something long constricted within me. My phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I never meant to hurt. You are Rachel. Bold of her to reach out after I'd blocked her number. I typed back, yet you did, repeatedly and deliberately. The difference between intention and impact is exactly where responsibility lives. I deleted her number immediately after sending, not interested in whatever justification or apology she might offer. Some bridges aren't meant to be repaired once burned. They're meant to illuminate all the other paths you never noticed before. 2 weeks into our exile, I returned to the house alone. Marion had secured a temporary court order allowing me access to retrieve personal belongings and financial documents. James was required to be absent during my visit, a small mercy that allowed me to breathe as I walked through rooms that no longer felt like home. I started in the office, methodically, photographing tax returns, insurance policies, and investment statements. Marion's instructions echoed in my mind. Follow the money. Men who hide affairs often hide assets, too. The task felt invasive, like performing an autopsy on my marriage, cutting open each financial organ to examine what killed us. In the back of James's desk drawer, behind a stack of warranties for appliances we no longer owned, I found a burgundy folder I'd never seen before. Inside, statements for a bank account I didn't know existed. An account with nearly $87,000. Money siphoned in small increments over 3 years from our joint savings. My hands trembled as I photographed each statement, each unexplained withdrawal. This wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. It was calculated financial infidelity. I wondered if Rachel knew about this account, if they'd planned to use this money for their fresh start together. The master bedroom felt like entering a crime scene. I avoided looking at the bed, focusing instead on collecting my jewelry, photographs, and the few family heirlooms I'd inherited from my grandmother. In the bathroom, I found evidence Rachel had already begun moving in. Unfamiliar makeup brushes in the drawer, an expensive face cream I would never buy, a toothbrush still in its packaging. I was examining a prescription bottle with her name on it when my phone rang, Kate checking in. You okay? She asked. You've been there almost 2 hours. I found a secret bank account, I replied, and Rachel's stuff in the bathroom. Kate's sharp intake of breath carried clearly through. The phone. That son of a bitch. He moved her in already? Not fully. Just establishing a beachhead. Get what you need and get out, Em. Don't torture yourself. As I was gathering the last of my things, headlights swept across the driveway. James's BMW pulled up, and he emerged with Rachel beside him. My stomach lurched. I still had 20 minutes left in my court-approved window. I watched from the upstairs window as they approached the front door, laughing about something. Rachel looked younger in person than in the mental image I'd constructed, maybe early 30s to my 41. She wore her confidence like an expensive perfume, her hand casually proprietorial on James's arm. They froze in the foyer when they saw my suitcases by the door. "Emily?" James called out, alarm edging his voice. I descended the stairs slowly, the burgundy folder in one hand, my phone in the other. "You're early," I said. "Court order says I have the house until 6. Rachel had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting her weight from one designer heel to the other. James stepped slightly in front of her, protective in a way that made my skin crawl. "We thought you'd be finished by now," he said, checking his watch with deliberate casualness. I held up the folder. "I got distracted by some interesting reading. Material. Care to explain the account at First Merchants? The one with our money in it?" His face remained impressively blank, but a muscle twitched in his jaw, his tell since college poker games. "That's my personal savings, from before we were married. Funny, since the first deposit was made 7 years ago, and all the transfers come from our joint account." I turned to Rachel. "Did you know he's been squirreling away money? Or were you supposed to be surprised with it after the divorce? A little nest egg for your new life together." She looked at James, confusion, replacing her discomfort. What is she talking about? For the first time, I felt something close to pity for her. She was just another woman being lied to by the same man. "She's trying to cause problems," James said quickly. "It's an old investment account, that's all." I laughed, a genuine, unexpected sound that echoed in the foyer. "You're still lying? Even now, when there's nothing left to preserve?" I turned to Rachel. "He's been transferring money from our family accounts for years, nearly $90,000. Feel free to ask him what else he hasn't told you." I grabbed my suitcases and walked past them to the door. James caught my arm, his fingers digging in with unnecessary force. "Don't do this, Emily," he whispered. "We can work something out." I looked down at his hand until he released me. "Marion Abernathy has copies of everything I found today. I suggest you call your lawyer." Outside, the summer evening wrapped around me like a warm blanket. I loaded my car without looking back at the house, at the two people watching from the doorway. As I drove away, my phone pinged with a text from a number I recognized from the documents. James's secret cell phone, the one I'd never known about until today. "You'll regret this," it read. But as the house disappeared in my rearview mirror, all I felt was the lightness of shedding another layer of lies, another weight I'd carried without knowing. Whatever came next, a messy divorce, financial battles, co-parenting challenges, at least I was walking into it with my eyes finally completely open. Autumn arrived with a flurry of legal paperwork and school forms. By mid-September, we'd established a routine of sorts. The children stayed with me in a rented townhouse during the week and spent weekends with James at what they still called home. Each Sunday night, they returned with stories I didn't want to hear about Rachel making pancakes or teaching Olivia to French braid. I smiled through gritted teeth, reminding myself that their relationship with her wasn't my battle to fight. Marion proved worth every penny of her substantial retainer. When James's lawyer tried to characterize my driveway bonfire as evidence of mental instability, she countered with detailed records of his financial deception. When he claimed he couldn't afford the temporary support payments, she produced statements from his hidden account. Each small victory felt like reclaiming a piece of ground in a war I never wanted to fight. He's offered a settlement, Marian announced during our October meeting, sliding a document across her desk. It's surprisingly reasonable. I scanned the terms. A fair division of assets, generous child support, joint custody with primary physical custody to me. What's the catch? No public disclosure of infidelity in the court records. He wants a no-fault divorce. Of course he did. James had always been obsessed with his reputation at the firm, with the community's perception of him as the perfect family man. A divorce citing irreconcilable differences was palatable. Documented adultery was not. His partnership review is coming up, I murmured, the pieces clicking into place. He doesn't want the other partners to know. Marian nodded. Precisely. So the question is, how much is his public humiliation worth to you? I considered this on my drive home, weighing justice against practicality. Fighting for a fault divorce would be messier, longer, harder on the children. The settlement offered financial security and stability. All it cost was the public acknowledgement of his betrayal, something everyone who mattered already knew anyway. That evening, I found Olivia sitting on the porch swing, scrolling through her phone with the concentrated focus of early adolescence. Homework. Finished? I asked, settling beside her. Ages ago. She hesitated, then turned the phone toward me. Dad posted this today. It was a photo of James, Rachel, and both kids at an apple orchard, all smiles and coordinated autumn outfits. The caption read, "Making new memories with the people who matter most." He'd tagged Rachel, whose profile picture showed her kissing his cheek. My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. Looks like you had fun. I didn't. Olivia pulled her knees to her chest. She kept telling me to smile bigger for the picture, like 15 times. Then she posted it on her Instagram and called us her bonus kids. She made air quotes around the phrase. We're not a bonus, we're just stuck. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, breathing through the surge of protective anger. You're not stuck, honey. You're transitioning. It's different, and it's hard, but you'll find solid ground again. She leaned against me, suddenly looking much younger than 12. Do you hate her? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so careful not to speak ill of Rachel in front of the children, to channel my hurt into legal strategies rather than bitter comments. I don't hate her, I said finally. I'm angry at the situation, at Dad for his choices, sometimes at myself for not seeing what was happening sooner. But hate takes too much energy, and I need mine for other things right now. Olivia considered this with the serious contemplation she brought to everything. Like what? Like figuring out who I am without Dad, who I want to be next. I squeezed her shoulder. Like being present for you and Ethan. Like finding joy again. Have you? Found joy, I mean. The question struck me as profound beyond her years. Had I found joy in these months of upheaval? I thought about my morning runs through the neighborhood, a habit I'd abandoned years ago when James complained about the early alarm. About the book club I'd joined at Kate's insistence, where I'd discovered a passion for historical fiction I'd forgotten. About the community college photography course I'd enrolled in for the spring semester, fulfilling a creative interest James had always dismissed as impractical. I'm finding pieces of it, I told her honestly. Like a puzzle I'm putting together again. Some days I find more pieces than others. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, I emailed Marian my decision. I would accept the settlement with one additional condition. James would transfer ownership of the house to me. If he wanted his public dignity preserved, he could pay for it with the home he'd planned to share with Rachel. His counteroffer came the next morning. He'd agree if I took over the remaining mortgage. Marian advised against it, citing the financial burden. But I insisted. That house contained 15 years of memories. not all of them tainted by his betrayal. The garden I'd planted, the height marks on the kitchen doorframe, the treehouse James and I had built together when Ethan was 4, before whatever dissatisfaction had led him to Rachel's arms. "Are you sure?" Marion asked when I signed the final papers. "This isn't about spite, is it?" I thought about Olivia's question about joy, about the pieces of myself I was reclaiming day by day. "It's not spite," I assured her. "It's reclamation." 3 days later, I stood in what was now legally my foyer, listening to the echo of my footsteps on hardwood floors. The house felt empty without the children, who would join me tomorrow after their last weekend at Dad's apartment. I wandered from room to room, mentally cataloging changes I wanted to make. New paint colors, different furniture arrangements, a complete renovation of the master bathroom, where Rachel's toiletries had once signaled my replacement. In the kitchen, I found a bottle of champagne I'd been saving for our 16th anniversary, still months away. I opened it without ceremony and poured a single glass, raising it to my reflection in the window. "To small victories," I whispered, "and to whatever comes next."